Good morning, everyone. Um, Coming to you today from a little town called Brighton, Ontario, traditional territory of the Mississauga peoples. Super grateful to have this opportunity to share a little bit about myself with all of you today. Um, I think the overwhelming themes of my faith journey or my spiritual journey are surrender, deconstruction, and an ever evolving understanding of what um, the term God means to me. So I didn't grow up in like any faith or religious context. I mean, I didn't go to, my mom went to church for a while, but she tried to bring us kids for a little while, but we didn't, it didn't take. We never really went unless we were made to go. So I didn't really grow up in the church or really thinking too much about faith at all. I sort of came to the realm of the spirit through my history with struggles with addiction, struggles with my sexuality and orientation. And, it was through those experiences that there was I don't know whether it was an inbreaking or a breaking open or sort of a relationship of between the both. So I struggled with addiction for a long time, um, all through my adolescence and into adulthood. And I got clean and sober when I was in my mid 30s, and I'll be 49 this year. So I struggled from an early age with my sexual orientation and sexual identity. When I was growing up, they didn't have gay straight alliance in schools and stuff like that. And I didn't really come from an affirming family context. And so I really didn't have an outlet to understand what was happening with me when I was a teenager and that in puberty and developing and that. And so I just assumed I was supposed to be straight or um, heterosexual and didn't really have an outlet to talk about the other experiences I was having internally. So that's what I did. I um, tried to be straight, I guess, which didn't really work out so well. A lot of internal struggles, a lot of pain, a lot of anxiety, a lot of suffered with panic attacks for a while. And just, my coping mechanism was a variety of drugs and alcohol. And so I tried, moving. I moved to Niagara Falls for a while. I got down there and I just ended up repeating the same patterns, right? I didn't, I got into a relationship with with a guy. Um, I didn't change anything about what was going on. So I was just sort of repeating the same pattern. And when I realized that was the case, I just sort of went heavy into the drugs, and things got really bad for a few years. And then it was a result of coming to that place where I was terrified to die, but I didn't really know how to live anymore either. And so being really stuck in that place of trauma and complexity and suicidal ideation, I think there was this breaking open. There was this coming to a moment of absolute surrender where I was just like, it wasn't even like, God, if you get me out of this, I'll never do it again, which was, I said that a lot, but this one was different. This one was like, you know what, if there is something, I need your help, and I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to get through this. And so that's what I describe as this moment of breaking open and breaking in at the same time. And I sort of liken it to a spiritual conversion, like Paul on the road to Damascus and the biblical narrative. It's a sudden onset of insight that changed everything about who I was, like instantaneously. And so in that moment, I found the meaning of surrender. I really entered into that place, and from that place, I checked myself into like a detox facility. I went to treatment, and I was homeless, so I didn't have any place to go. So my parents had said that if I finished treatment, I could come home. So I did that. I did treatment, and I came home. And that's how I got back to Waterloo Region, because that's where I grew up. And then I started going to church with my mom as a way to rebuild a relationship and rebuild trust and try to find some sense of how to rebuild my life. And I don't know, right? I'm in this place of surrender. I'm in this place of like just radically open, and I stopped trying to predict and control outcomes. Like it was like I entered into this place of ambiguity and uncertainty, and and started to sort of live with the questions instead of wanting answers. So it was like a blank slate. It really was like a blank slate. And I was okay with that. I was at peace with that. And so I just sat and I just listened, and I was just with people. And thank God I was in an affirming context, an affirming congregation of people. And because one of the things they said to me when I was in treatment was, if you don't start getting honest about who you are, you're going to die, either spiritually, emotionally, or physically. This will kill you. And I really understood that. So I came out, like I was just like, this is who I am. And so I'm entering all these streams at the same time. I came out. I'm going to church with my mom. I'm listening to this narrative of Jesus, who I want to say now, I didn't have this terminology at the time, but my wife and I just wrote an article on how Jesus queers everything, right? So, but I can describe that as the time I was in then, right? I'm hearing this narrative about Jesus and how he changes everything and turns everything over, and everything that you thought you knew, it's not like that. It's like this. So there was just a narrative of, because I always felt like a sort of a square peg in a round hole. Like I always felt like I never really fit. And I'm like, yeah, that's like Jesus, right? Like now I got something in common with this dude. And so there was just a really affirming narrative there. And then of course there was an affirming people, right? I was encouraged in my sexuality. I was encouraged in my spiritual journey. I was going to 12-step programs, which also encouraged us to turn our lives and our will over to a power greater than ourselves. I knew in a visceral level, like with every fiber of my being, that I was in a relationship with something bigger than myself. Because if it was up to me, I wouldn't be here, right? And so I really understood that I was in relationship with something beyond myself and beyond my human community. And I rested there for a long time. And I just soaked everything in. I disregarded anything that didn't make sense to me, and I invited in everything that was just loving, compassionate, affirming, and encouraging. And I don't know, I just sort of fell in love with that. I fell in love with this idea that that whatever is sort of outside of mainstream, or outside of what is normal, or outside of these sort of you know, these boxes or whatever, that's where I like to be. That's what made sense to me, and that's what I really, really fell in love with. And I find that in a lot of different faith traditions, and I find that in a lot of different places in the world. I just first heard it with the story of Jesus, and the story of Christ, and the story of resurrection. And so that's sort of was my first love, and that's why I'm sort of come from that context. But I also find that theme in so many other places and in so many other people. And it's so beautiful, because part of my faith journey also has been this ever expanding understanding of what the nature of God is. And it is not the Christian God or whatever. It is just this it's almost like the expanse, right? It's like an expansive, all-encompassing, overwhelming spirit of energy that just holds not only humankind but creation, right? And today when I think of God, I think more of God's body as creation itself, which is why I love the work that Kai is doing, because creation theology and finding spirit in the earth is very meaningful for me today. So when I talk about the overwhelming themes of surrender, deconstruction, and an ever-expanding understanding of what God means to me, surrender. It started with surrender. It started with this overwhelming breaking open and breaking in at the same time, and just entering into relationship with that light, and the surrender of being okay with uncertainty, being okay with ambiguity, and just realizing that the direction or the answer or the path or whatever really comes about through the asking of questions. And so the more that I'm involved in a relationship with the question, the more I actually receive direction. So, and then I had to unlearn, right? I feel like I had to unlearn everything I ever was taught, right? Oh yeah, you have to be straight. Oh, you have to think and do things this way, right? Like I had to sort of unlearn a lot of things that I thought I knew, and give myself over to a rediscovering and a reaffirming of who I was, even from within myself, right? Because internalized homophobia was a big deal, and I have it in spades, right? Like I internalized that homophobia, and I didn't like myself, and so I had to relearn how to love myself through the eyes of this Christ story, of this, through this entity that said it loved me. So I relearned, and then just let this relationship with this inbreaking light expand into all sorts of different forms. Like I hear the spirit speak with me in creation. I hear the spirit speak with me through other human beings. I hear the spirit speak with me like, I like to tell my congregation, God talks to me on the radio. Like, not like, I'm driving along, I hear a song, you're really into it, you're really catching that groove, you're really hearing a message that is just what you need to hear in that moment. So that kind of stuff, just really being in relationship with this sense of light and love, and letting it take on any and all forms. And so that's why I really love this concept of interfaith and multi-faith, and being together with so many different partners in spirit, or colleagues in spirit, because it's like we're all sensing that same place, but we just articulate it different, we experience it different, and our circumstances are different, and that's how it's supposed to be, right? Like, God is in diversity, for me, right? And so yeah, I mean, it just took off from there. After I was about 5 years clean, I started discerning this call to ministry. I was, I loved being with people in those complex places, right? In those places where things are breaking open and breaking in. And that happens in places of trauma. It happens in places of complexity. And so I started discerning a call to ministry, and I found what was Waterloo Lutheran Seminary there now, Martin Luther University College. For some unknown reason, they accepted me, and we were off to the races. And so I went on my university journey, came out of there. I joined the United Church of Canada. I went in discernment with them. They wanted me. And so I got my degrees, I got ordained, and it just so happened that the congregation in which I was doing my internship, the minister announced his retirement just as I was coming to the end of my looking for a call. And the congregation was like, yeah, we'd love you to be our minister. So now I'm called to serve and be in the community in which I grew up, and which is super awesome. So I now do chaplaincy for Grand River Hospital and St. Mary's Hospital. And I've just been accepted as into the Canadian Armed Forces as a military chaplain of the 11 Field Artillery Regiment in Guelph. And so, like I said, so I'm really, thank you. I'm really, really excited, because again, I just keep getting drawn to those really places of complexity. And I think that's just because that's for me what happened, right? It was that moment where you, I don't know how else to describe it. You can't be who you were, but you don't know who you are. And so how do we move forward from there? And that's where I love to work with people. So I feel like that's what I wanted to say today. I hope that's enough. I hope that you've given you a little bit of insight into me, and I'm so grateful that this is such a wonderful place to share with you. And so I'll stop there, but I'm open to any questions and any dialogue whatsoever. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very, very much, James. I so appreciate your openness with us and true sharing. I just felt there was so much I could relate to, and I'm sure many of us all felt we could relate to so many of the things that you described. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a couple of minutes, just a short time now before we break into small groups. So just 3 or 4 minutes. If there are some direct questions you wanted to ask right away, now's the time to just ask that or make a comment.
Michael's has his hand up.
It's Ben. Oh.
Yes, Ben.
What was the name of the book you wrote with your friend? Or
Sorry, Ben, could you say that again?
Oh, did you say you wrote a book? What was the title of that book you wrote with your friend?
Oh no, I don't think I write a book. I don't think I wrote a book. Did I? No, I didn't write a book. Oh, I wrote an article. Oh yes. Oh yes. I'm sorry. My wife and I just wrote an article. It's coming out in the next edition of the Consensus magazine. And it's called a queering. And we liken Jesus as our pioneer queer, because Jesus was the first to push the boundaries, turn upside down. You know, the concept of queering, of being queer, something being queer, before it was used as a, you know, proverbial bat for gay bashing, it was actually quite an ideal place to be, because it was outside of the realm of normal, or whatever that is. And so we liken Jesus to our pioneer queer. So it's called A Queering, and it's in Consensus Magazine.
Okay. Any other questions right away? No, I not
Yes,
seeing any.
Michael Clifton.
Oh,
Yeah.
Michael. Sorry, yeah, Michael.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I stuck the hand up because I'm still driving. I am almost at the office, and I'm going to have to leave in a second. But Jen, I just wanted to say how moving, touching the whole story was. It's so great to hear your story. I don't really have a question. I actually resonated with a lot of it, which is probably strange coming from a straight conservative Christian. but
No.
It really resonated deeply. And the thought I kept having going over and over my head is what a blessing it is for me to know you. Now, I haven't slept in over 24 hours, so my emotions are fairly raw, but
I love you. It's a blessing to know you too, Michael.
that you're my friend. And
Thank you. Thank
your
you.
story. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Don. Can't hear you, Don.
Sorry, I was muted. Just a very quick question. Again, what a wonderful sharing you did there. But in the course of your sharing, you've outlined a very important balance. Humility is extremely important, as you've clearing that. And then you talk about self-love, which that's really a balance that's very hard to hit, isn't it? You have to love yourself, but at the same time, totally have humility. Thank you for just taking us there. That's been wonderful.
Thank you, Don.